be showing you how to make half square triangles, or sometimes referred to as HSTs, fast and accurately. And we're going to use a trim up tool to get the half square triangle. But first I'm going to show you how to sew one together. First of all, your squares that you start out with, you want to follow the directions of your pattern that you're following. For the size, for example, in a pattern that I'm using currently, it's calling for 3.5 inch square half square triangles. So I need to start with more than 3.5 inches to be able to trim those down perfectly. So I'm starting with 4-inch squares. Sometimes people even size up all the way another inch. So you could go as high as 4.5. But you will be trimming off a lot of extra fabric that you may not want to waste. But that's certainly okay to be safe while you're learning how to make half square triangles. So you have your two fabrics that you're going to sew together, and you'll take one of them and draw a line on the back side. The other one you'll want to put facing the right side of the fabric, so right sides together. This line will need to be positioned under your needle so that you will be sewing 1/4 inch from that line on both sides. This will actually result in being the line that we cut to make our two half square triangles out of these two squares. So move that line over 1/4 inch, or in other words, it can be right along the 1/4 inch foot if you're using a 1/4 inch foot. Can stop there. If you have more that you want to send through that you have ready, you can continue to chain piece. When you get to the end of your chain or to the end of this square, lift your needle, turn it around, do the same thing again. Same position, and next to that line, and continue. Now I'm going to stop right here and show you what I do so that you don't have to draw this line. You can actually put seam tape down that will guide you for the 1/4 inch. So as I'm pushing my square through, I'm actually watching the point, the bottom point, and following this line. And as I get up more towards my regular markings on my machine, I can see where that 1/4 inch is and continue. So there's our first one. You can trim off your tail that you started with. You can also trim off where you turned to go back down the other side. And then the next step is to cut on the drawn line, or if you don't have a line, cut in between. You can measure that over 1/4 inch and use a rotary cutter if you want to be super accurate, or you can just cut on your line. Or if you're a daredevil like me and you don't have the line drawn on there, you can just wing it. It's not going to make a difference in the accuracy of this square. So here we have our two half square triangles, but we don't want to open them up yet. Okay, so now that we have our sewing done, it's time for the trimming. I'm using the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmer. This is by New Leaf Stitches, Carrie Carr. And the package comes with two of these. One of them, this one right here, is on the 1/2 inch variation, and the other one's on the whole inch. So since I'm using 4-inch squares and I'm trimming to 3.5, I'm going to look for my 3.5 inch section here. And so this dotted line, not the solid line underneath, but the what looks like a stitch line there, you want to lay right directly on your stitch line. And I use this small Olfa board because I can kind of hold it all together here at the edge of my sewing space here. If I don't want to get up and go to the cutting table that I have and stand and do it, then I will do it this way, and I have the leverage that I need to hold it all in place. So after you find that dotted line and place it on your seam line that you just made, you're going to want to leave a little bit on each side. The temptation is to move it over to one side and just trim one side, but don't do that because you don't know exactly what's going on your second layer there. So you might trim you know, enough on this side, but then on the other side you're short, so you can't do that. You need to leave a little bit on each side. So take your rotary cutter, cut that back this way, and then if you want to cut your dog ears off, you can do that here, which you do want to cut your dog ears off. But I tend not to use this feature of the ruler a lot because it takes so long for me to get that down in there without cutting the plastic. That's something that I seem to do with this. So as you can see, once we take this off and you take your pieces away, you've got your perfect half square triangle there, all trimmed up. Okay. So get rid of my little scraps there. Now you can open it. You can open it and press it open like this. And I do like to just kind of finger press it before I do that. Or you can press to your dark side. And if you do that, be sure and press on the ends first, and then run your iron over the rest of it. That way you don't get a rounded seam there, because these are on the bias grain of the fabric. So I'll show you again on another piece. I'll do the white side this time. I'm using white thread, so it's hard to see, but there's my seam line. I'm picking the 3.5 inch and leaving myself a little bit on each side. And then you have to firmly hold it. You can't let it move. There's one side. There's my other. Now instead of using these dog ear trimmers, I've just gotten in the habit of turning it along this line here and then just making a perpendicular cut for those. It works the same way. It doesn't affect the size of your block at all to just eyeball that, just making those perpendicular cuts. So now I'll show you the ironing. I have one here. I could show you how I just iron it open. There's that. Or I've got a little too much steam on there. I really don't want to have steam on. So I start on my corners here. If I'm going to press towards the dark side, just do those first and then go this way. And that way you don't cause this to bow there where it's bias cut. So let's measure and see what we have here. So we wanted our result to be 3.5 inches. And that looks like what we have here. And if you can see this line here that's on all of your rulers, if you put that right across your seam line there, it should all match up pretty well, and these look pretty good. This is as close as I'll ever get. This way, when you do them according to how the ruler is supposed to be used and with accurate cutting to start with, your half square triangles will always come out perfectly, and you won't be cutting off your points when you go to sew your pieces together. I hope that helps you. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments or send me an email. And all of that information is in the description box, as well as where you can purchase the Clearly Perfect slotted trimmers from Amazon.